Hello, everybody. Welcome back once again for the final installment of an Introduction to Mixed Methods Research. So what we've done so far is talk about general background and philosophy of science issues as relevant to mixed methods work, different rationales and definitions of mixed methods, trying to get into some of the details a little bit, and then went over some of the big mixed methods designs. With that information that you have so far, you should be able to at least get started in terms of thinking about uh, how you could think about your research from a mixed methods framework. Of course, just doing the research, conceptualizing the research and doing the research isn't necessarily enough. Usually we want to disseminate that research in some way. And so that's why it brings us to lecture 4 here, which is strategies for publishing mixed methods research. This is be a much shorter discussion, so you made it this far and you're rewarded with a shorter lecture to finish things out. But this is often a question that comes up. I think a lot of researchers are unclear about how to go about publishing this work, especially because a lot of what they read and the journals that they read are not mixed method studies, as has been discussed extensively throughout these lectures. The vast majority of quantitative research psychological research is quantitative. And so you don't, especially in the sort of top tier, the most widely respected journals that many students and early career researchers feel like they need to be publishing in order for career advancement. It's difficult when you don't see them in those journals. You don't have good models for how to go about publishing mixed methods research. So to be clear, I don't have all the answers for this. I think it's really complex. It's difficult. I'll talk a little bit about what I think is useful, but part of it is just that it continues to be the case that we're in a system in which quantitative methods dominate, qualitative methods occupy a marginalized position, and mixed methods research, I think, is intuitive and appealing to a lot of people, but there's so much confusion around it that they're not sure what it's supposed to look like or how to do it. And so I think in general, it's easier to be able to publish a mixed methods paper than it is a qualitative paper in a lot of journals in psychology. So at least you have that going for you. But there's still a lot of challenges that come up. First is, this is obvious maybe and true for any research that you're doing, but you really want to locate the proper journal, especially if you're just starting out with mixed methods research. This is a question you have to ask yourself, with just about anything you're doing, is who do I want my audience to be and what journal should I submit to? And what's related to that often is what kind of battles do I want to engage with? Right. So there could be some journals that rarely publish qualitative or mixed methods work, but you really want that journal to do that. You want to see more work there. And one of the ways that you can see an increase potentially in different kinds of research being published in certain journals is by submitting work there. Right? If nobody ever submits anything there, then it's not going to get published. So you could say, you know what, this is a strong study. I think it's a good fit for this journal conceptually. And so you're going to go ahead and try, right? So that's sort of the uphill battle, is just send it wherever you want to send it and be ready if it's not going to work out. Alternatively, if you're not interested in engaging in those kind of battles and you're looking to get the paper published in a place that will appreciate the work and that you think the readership and the audience of the journal will embrace the project, then you can look at those sort of friendly journals and think about which ones you might be interested in publishing it. So there are journals out there that will publish mixed methods work and across different subdisciplines of psychology. So developmental journals are actually a little bit better, I think, than most major sub areas of psychology with respect to this. Most major developmental journals will consider mixed methods research. Certainly, Journal of Adolescent Research is essentially a mixed methods qualitative only journal. Emerging Adulthood, which is I am the editor of for another 32 days or so, is very welcoming to mixed methods articles. Developmental psychology has shown itself to be quite open. I've published several there, as have many other people. Child development has published some, but I'd say less so than some of the other journals. Journal of Adolescence publishes mixed methods research. So there's quite a few. You see it less often with the infant um, in young child journals and more so with the adolescent and older adult journals. In personality psychology, Journal of Personality will publish mixed methods papers. Journal of Research and Personality used to, I'm not sure currently. Sometimes things change depending on who the editor is. And so often what you want to do is go seek out the journal and read what the aims and scopes are. See what it says they're interested in considering. Um, Also, it's useful to read. Oftentimes when new editors take over journals, they will publish a brief editorial about what their interests are and foci are. And so that can be a really useful place to see, do they mention mixed methods or qualitative work, or do they mention multiple different methods or something like that? There was actually one, I don't remember exactly the journal, so I don't want to name it now, but where there was a new editor statement for a journal where he was explicit that he would not consider qualitative papers. So sometimes they're clear in the other direction of things that they don't want. Also, sometimes what they say they want isn't consistent with what they want. There's a major journal in personality psychology where the editor said that they were interested in receiving qualitative and mixed methods papers. A friend of mine sent a qualitative case study paper there, and it was desk rejected, wasn't even reviewed, basically saying they weren't going to consider a case study. So sometimes you don't get clear messages, but it's always worth trying, and it's good to try to at least figure out what you think the journal might be interested in. Another way to do that is to look at, what the journal has published recently. So look at the table of contents from the, what's online first, and then what's been published in the last several issues, and see if you notice any qualitative or mixed methods work there. And so that would give you an indication of whether the journal might be friendly. In terms of social psychology, there's much fewer journals that are amenable to mixed and qualitative research in social psychology, especially American social psychology journals. British Journal of Social Psychology is open to multiple methods. And then the Journal of Social Issues is also another option, although that's usually a special issue, sort of like organized special issue. You can't just submit unsolicited. So the bottom line is you really would want to have the most successful experience is really do your homework and make sure you know what a particular journal is interested in and what they tend to publish. And that's a good way to determine whether it would be a good fit for your project. The second one, I think I've really been emphasizing this throughout, is to make sure you're really clear on what your design is and what the contribution is in terms of the mixed methods framework. This really comes out from the fact that the vast majority of psychological researchers have zero training in mixed methods. So they have no background, no frame of reference, no way to intuitively understand or even any existing schema with which they can put a study. So it's really up to you as the author to be super clear about what is the nature of the design. And we went over some designs, so now you have that, and then what is the contribution? Why, especially the qualitative component, why is that qualitative component there? And I say that because, again, in psychology, the vast majority of reviewers and editors aren't going to question doing quantitative work, but they might question the qualitative work. And so that does sadly require a little bit of extra justification. And so you want to be very clear on the design, especially if you're using the embedded design with the quantitative first and then qualitative as secondary, as I mentioned, which is the most common mixed method design that I see in psychology, but also the most problematic because it's most often the most poorly done. It's unclear what the design is, it's unclear what the contribution is. And so you really want to spend extra time on the front end. Don't wait and hope that they all get it and it makes sense. You want to make sure on the version that you submit is very clear on these issues, and that will help get the paper published. The final issue is one of the biggest complaints that researchers make about mixed methods articles or problems with potentially publishing mixed methods articles and qualitative too, is that they require more space. And so some journals have really stringent page requirements or word requirements. So the paper can't be any more than 5,000 words or can't be any more than 30 pages. And so authors feel like it's very difficult for them to be able to do a mixed method study in that short of a page allocation. And so this is a barrier to submitting to certain journals. There's definitely a lot of truth to that. I think it is the case. I mean, you have more components, there's more to say. I also say, as an editor, I can say quite clearly that most papers could and should be a lot shorter than they are. And chances are very high that however long your paper is, you could cut it by at least a third, and it wouldn't, not only would it not, see if I can't say that correctly, not only would it not make it worse, it would often almost always make it much better. In most cases, shorter papers are more effective. And so it is the case sometimes you just really can't communicate what you're trying to do in a short amount of space, and in which case then you're going to have to make some compromises about where you might submit that work. But I wouldn't use this as an initial sort of decision criterion that you use to opt out of certain journals that otherwise would be good locations for your work. So you want to think, if the requirement is no more than 7,000 words and yours is 10,000, I can guarantee you that you could cut 3,000 words and that the article could still be good. And so I think this also too would make editors more amenable to mixed methods papers if they weren't worried about them always being so long. So I think, and I'd say it's a general point of all papers that you write. And I'm the worst person probably to be giving this advice because I don't follow it at all, but I'm still going to give it to you, that you should try to keep your papers short. The shorter the better. You want to be clear, you want to make sure you're explaining everything, you want to include all the relevant details, make good use of external supplements for a lot of details that you want to have in there but don't need to be in the paper themselves. But in general, you want to try to keep the paper short, and that will really help your ability to publish a mixed methods paper. So those are just some quick strategies that I think have been helpful. Again, there's nothing particularly profound about any of this, but based on my experience, both as an author and as a reviewer and an editor, if you follow these three suggestions, you will greatly reduce the barriers to being able to publish your mixed methods work. Well, thank you very much, and Taxamika, for spending all this time and going through all 4 of these lectures, about 2 hours in total in the end. That's actually about what I expected it to be. I didn't want to say that at the beginning because who knows how long I actually would have spoken for, but altogether, I think these totaled about 2 hours of time, and I appreciate your attentiveness. And now it's time for this delicious looking fika. So long.